I think I'd like to structure my intervention first by starting with two fundamental principles that I think are essential for Europe to have a more sustainable growth and also a competitive pathway for Europe in the future. First and foremost, I think the need to internalize externalities in order to send the right, clear market signals. There are a lot of examples of externalities right now that are not being dealt with or that are not internalized. The carbon price, for example, is certainly an effective tool, but it is not covering all of the sectors of the economy. And we also need to address other types of more potentially perverse incentives, such as fossil fuel subsidies, in order to use some of those resources and incentives more in favor of renewables or other type of technologies that would allow us to be decarbonized. I think the second issue, and this to me comes at the heart of a more circular economy, and the circular economy developed originally by von Weizsäcker, I never can pronounce his name, but how we should shift taxation more from people to resources, and that being one means also to provide more entrepreneurship and more innovation and a more competitive Europe. And this certainly is taken up by the European Commission with its circular economy package that will be coming out by the end of the year. Circular economy is certainly a key fundamental for Europe to achieve a low carbon economy. If you think, for example, switching to renewables and to energy efficiency can certainly help reduce cutting the emissions, but not enough to get us to the 80 or 90% decarbonization objectives that we need and that the IPCC says is necessary. For example, the volumes of materials that we use, or the volumes of products that we waste need to be reused, recycled, remanufactured. And examples of copper, glass, or even carbon, if you think of carbon reuse, and how that can be a product for another industry. I think a fundamental, in your question of how to build a fundamental, an economy that is more resource efficient and that allows it to be competitive, in my mind it goes really to rethinking the entire industries, not looking at them from a sector-specific basis, but taking as a fundamental point the human need that these products are serving. So if you think, for example, of food, mobility, shelter, and this is certainly, and using more of this type of approach as a bottom-up analysis for how the European economy and European production should look like in 2030, 2050. If you think, for example, of mobility, the mobility that we know today of cars, it will be an entire different mobility sector that will have shifted with the use of ICT or with the use of digitalization. Much more if you think also of shared economies or blah cars, as we see those different types of business models emerging. One of the works that we're doing at the European Climate Foundation is through an initiative called Industrial Innovation for Competitiveness. How can you provide a competitive edge to Europe by focusing on innovation that looks at an innovation that is compatible and allowing Europe to decarbonize? And what we're seeing there is that the current paradigm in which we are, which is looking at sectors as we know them, or manufacturing, if you think even of having the objective of 20% of manufacturing in GDP, we see that that there's an increasing blurred lines between services and products. I mean, if you think of companies right now, even the likes of the utility companies, they're no longer selling energy, they're selling the service associated with energy. So this certainly has important implications around how you design a policy and looking at how, back to your single market question, how you would work in sync between the liberalization of goods and services. I mean, if you don't allow that transformation of industry and industry becoming more service-oriented, and if there are bottlenecks in that regard, then we're slowing down the movement of innovation and slowing down the capabilities of Europe to innovate. Maybe I can give you an example of some of the conversations I've had with, I was working a lot on industrial energy efficiency before and still now, but I was working in China and India and in the US and trying to work with different governments at the regional level on how to develop energy efficient companies, right? And there was, what I appreciated a lot in working in China was this competition that so we were working with the national government, but then also with the provinces. And you had this sense of competition between the regions wanting to be the best performing company and best performing region, and hence they would basically escalate in their level of ambition of how energy conservative they wanted to be or energy efficient. Now, when we work on the same topic in Europe, conversations with some companies are, well, typical example, if I have as a company 10 million to invest, I'm a global company, I'm an energy intensive company, if I have 10 million to invest in energy efficiency in Europe, or 10 million to invest in building new factories and expanding my production capacity elsewhere, in a market where there's emerging demand, well, then I will not invest my 10 million euros or 10, or billion euros in Europe. I will do that where there's a perspective for growth. And to me, there's a fundamental issue around if we want to succeed in the decarbonization and put it more in a positive dimension, there needs to be a prospect where there is actually a prospect for growth in Europe for those manufacturing. For those companies in order for them to transform themselves. And if you think, for example, another conversation with this time a cement company, and they say, we buy the offsets so we sell cement, CO2-free cement, right? They don't have the production technologies yet with carbon capture and storage, but we market our cement as being 100% CO2-free. No one's interested. So in the bids that they sell, in the bids that they make, they don't see a difference. So I think 2 points. One is, to what extent is society willing, and consumers willing to pay extra or privilege the fact that, this is a decarbonized product. The other point is that in the work that we're doing at ECF is to try and see to what extent you can actually have a more European project, a more European industrial strategy. Because certainly if you think of value chains, we're not talking about companies within their own sectors. If you think of the automotive sector, that being a typical example, we're talking about a European cluster, regional clusters, or ecosystems. And it's that dimension that I think could be, that needs to be motivated even further.